Hi, Gerhard Blum here, once again looking at the tyranny and the delusions of the social justice movement. I'd like to speak briefly about a recent show Fox aired. Fox News aired a program that was looking at a transgender boy, aka a girl who now identifies, self-declares that she's actually a boy. Well, why is this important? Well, it's important because we need to get an understanding, if we haven't already, of the radical transgender agenda and ideology that's damaging the lives and destroying the bodies of tens of thousands of predominantly young women and occasionally young men. And the other issue is Fox News. I don't know if you recall, but I mentioned several videos back about how CNN used to be the background music to my life. And then I got smart. I got smart quickly. And I've, canceled, the mainstream media. They're not canceling me. I canceled them. And instead, I turned to Fox News to get some honest reporting. And certainly there's a perspective there that's politically conservative and politically on the right. And not only are they politically on the right, they are right. They are right. Occasionally, there are opinions and perspectives I disagree with, but they rarely, if ever, confuse the news with their opinions and perspectives. Right? They give us the unvarnished truth, and it's a media source that I can trust. Now, this airing of this show, presenting these parents as champions for the silenced and marginalized trans community and championing their son, I find absolutely morally repugnant, and I can't imagine how Fox could air such a display. So this little girl, her parents determined that she was communicating to them before she could even speak that she was actually a boy, right? She was cruelly trapped in the body of a boy or in a girl. She's actually a boy before she could even speak, and came out at the age of 5. Well, what I do know from the clinical literature is that this is actually in keeping with classic symptomology in gender dysphoria, although it skews strongly towards boys. So predominantly boys at a very early age, 4 or 5 years old, don't seem to align properly with their genders. But occasionally women, that happens as well. Now, it is the case that you have adults who have transitioned, and transitioning was the least bad option. There are no good options. There are least bad options, and I think if an adult decides that in the balance of the issues and the costs, that transitioning is a choice that they want to make. I will also tell you that the literature is very clear that 80 to 95% of gender dysphorics, if approached with the previously held standard of care, which was watchful waiting. Watchful waiting, the transgender person can cut their hair, wear the clothes they want, change their names, no medical intervention, right? No medicine, no surgeries, care, counseling. Over 80%, from between 80 and 95% desist, which means they become reconciled to who they are with the bodies that they have. And the overwhelming number of cases, these gender dysphorics turn out to be gay, right? So there's a lot of confusion going on in their lives, and rather than being gender dysphoric, cruelly trapped in the wrong body, no, they're gay, and they become reconciled with their bodies. Now, parents are told that, well, you can simply go on hormone blockers, and so this allegedly, their parents are told this, that it puts a pause on puberty and development. It's just like a pause button, right? And then, if you change your mind, the child changes its mind, no harm done, things will continue as normal. Well, this is medically wrong. The medical science is clear on this. There's no such thing as putting the pause button. And reflect for a moment. Puberty. Puberty is a point in development where a flood of hormones changes the body's shape and appearance. And it happens at a very particular time, right? It doesn't happen arbitrarily or accidentally. There are differences within individuals as to when puberty hits, but there's no putting a pause and restarting this. So that's a lie. The other lie that parents are told is that, well, better a live son than a dead daughter, right? Because the alarming rates of suicidal ideation with gender dysphorics. And it is true that gender dysphorics have a significantly increased risk of suicide. What parents aren't told is that this does not change after intervention, right? This does not change. So disfiguring surgeries and hormones and hormone treatments, this does not change the outcome for suicidality and suicide. And there is some evidence that, in fact, it makes it worse. And what about detransitioners? I know you've been told that detransitioning is a myth. Well, it's not a myth, it's a reality. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who have realized after their bodies are permanently damaged that it's been a tragic mistake. And the leftists have deliberately squelched research into detransitioning, right? Why would they do that, right? Honest intellectual inquiry, particularly when dealing with something as drastic as disfiguring the bodies of young people. You would think Monty's being a brat here. Sorry. He's making himself a little mess. So research into this has been deliberately suppressed. To give you one example, right, in 2017, Bath Spa University, its ethics committee refused to allow research into detransitioning. It was allegedly potentially politically incorrect. This is from an ethics committee. They obviously don't know the first thing about ethics. And medical ethics, recall, its first principle is to do no harm. And lest you think this insanity can't get any worse, doctors are now transitioning healthy women into a state of apparent androgyny. I spoke of this earlier. This is this whole non-binary. Now everybody knows that non-binary is simply not an option on the table. You are male or female. And we live in societies now where you can pretend to be a member of the opposite sex if it makes your life more fulfilling, happier, and most people will agree to play along with the fiction. I certainly will, right? Notwithstanding a few reasonable caveats. So this is shameful, and I just can't imagine how Fox News could be parroting this poisonous nonsense. And as for the parents, As for the parents, this is, without question, Munchausen disease by proxy. Now, Munchausen disease by proxy, it's a diagnosable psychological affliction. This is where parents, predominantly mothers, will deliberately injure their children or poison their children to get sympathy from the community, demonstrating how loving and caring they are for their poor, sick child. And they get all sorts of attention and praise for being, these caring, wonderful mothers. Now, these parents pushing their child in front of the world on display says to me that they care more about being, demonstrating their social virtue for the world than protecting this child's sexuality. And once again, this child may very well have classical gender dysphoria, starting at the very early age, and it may persist. And if it does persist, maybe the least bad option is to transition. But under no circumstances should parents be pushing this child, too young to understand the consequences of their actions, in front of the world, and transitioning this child. This makes walking it all back impossible. And this has led to very serious outcomes. There have been a number of cases where people who've transitioned have ended up taking their lives, right? So this is utterly indefensible, and Fox News needs to examine its morals and its standards of, for airing its programs. This is not supporting oppressed people. This is toxic ideological nonsense, and they should be deeply ashamed of themselves. And for an elaborated discussion on this issue, amongst other very important issues, please do check out my book, Deconstructing Social Justice. It's available on Amazon, and as I say, it's not important because I wrote it. I wrote it because the issues are important. And if you've enjoyed this video, please drop a thumbs up, and thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.